10, 9, 8, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I believe we are live. Can we have a confirmation we're live? Jan, are we live? We're at Jan's house tonight, everyone. Just changing it up. And we're live now. Jan has invited me around her house. The internet is infinitely better in the forest. So I'm here in the forest and I've got a wonderful panel assembled tonight and I'd love to introduce you to them. Jan and Andrew are out there as well, so anything can happen tonight. We are live, uninterrupted, and it's all good. So why don't we go round and say your name, and then Heather, I'd love for you to tell us what you've been up to the last couple of days, but why don't you go last? So I've got a wonderful guest just below me on my screen who's down in Manly. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Louanne Mitchell. I am a captain in the Salvos, which means I'm a minister and an officer. And
right, stop. I need to know about this. Okay, so you're a captain and an officer.
Yes. Well, I'm an officer and my rank is captain.
Ah, lovely. That is immense. That is so good. I'm all I am is just a priest. And I'm like a rogue priest because I'm not in the Anglican Church anymore. So that is wonderful. It's great to have an officer amongst. Can we refer to you as captain for the night? Like you can
no. If you really want to. I do have some of my people that call me captain. The older people, they like to call me captain. Nice. But yes.
In when I was at the more trad church in England, some people would call me father, like the more Catholic things, and it was so weird. But honestly, like sometimes I kind of liked it a little bit. So, anyways,
thanks, Father Dan.
If you've just joined us, this is our kind of warm-up activity while you're getting your snacks together. And in the bottom corner there, we've got a lovely couple live from DY. Why don't you say hello, introduce yourselves?
Hi guys, Nick and Steve here.
Hello, how you going?
Wonderful, wonderful. And how's the like slobbery, fluffy, smelly animal going from earlier?
He's all right, but this little guy's.
No, I was talking about Steve, not the dog.
Oh.
I'm doing well, thanks, mate. I'm doing good.
It's a first for us having a dog on HVO Live. And then Heather, why don't you introduce yourself and say what you've been up to the last couple of days? Because we were just chatting before, and I said you've got to tell everyone about this live because it sounded so great. So Heather, what's been going on the last couple of days?
So I'm Heather Thompson. So everyone sees my name up on Facebook and calls me Heather Coles Thompson, but that's actually my middle name. Just so you know, but there's quite a few Heathers at H3O, so I'm one of the Heathers. And I'm upstairs at our house in North Kelly, and downstairs I think my kids are saying hello, maybe. So Dave and I have been on leave this week, and we've been having a staycation. So at first we were a bit about it because we're supposed to be in Africa at the moment, so was a little bit upset about it, but then thought, really want to make the most of this time. So we decided to
Can I just jump in there as well? Like you were supposed to be in Africa and then we were supposed to be staying at your house.
Yeah.
You offered it. So I'm gutted as well.
Yeah. Anyway, it's going ahead next Easter time. So you can have the North Kelly pad next Easter.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I just want to see more of the beaches. So yeah, it's great. Carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, so we did a few fun things. So we had a hotel a couple of days, and sometime whoever was the hotel manager for the day dropped breakfast menus off, and when the various people woke up, they ordered their breakfast and got breakfast in bed. They built a cubby house for Benj, which was completely amazing.
Wow.
And randomly I did canteen orders for the kids. So at their school they get to do they do online orders for their lunch orders, and so I set up a Google form and they did online lunch orders, and they thought it was pretty amazing. So but yeah, we just just hung out and did gardening and went down to the beach, and they built this cubby, and yeah, it was just really amazing doing nothing with the kids. Yeah, really.
Can I ask, you said you found ideas for this on Pinterest, is that right?
Oh no, well I did. I looked on Pinterest for some ideas for a staycation, but they were actually like really kind of complicated ideas. So we just gave up and did our own thing.
Okay, cool. So what we'd love to hear from people at home is, have you got any ideas for a staycation? Like, we'd love to hear your ideas, like anything that you've thought about during COVID, because we don't know how long this is going to go on for. And at some point, like, we might, like Heather, want to take a holiday. So any staycay ideas, just comment below. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll read some out in a few moments. The other thing that's kind of emerged of late is I made a discovery on Zoom. Have you noticed that my face is looking smoother than usual? Because when I was fiddling around with the settings, I had this kind of ethical dilemma, which I'd love all of the panels, well, not all of you, but one or two of your thoughts on. Basically, there's a button to smooth out your skin to make you look younger. So first of all, I want to vote. Like, have you done this? Like, have any of you done this?
No.
Not on Zoom.
Okay.
So, because we use Zoom for work, and my colleagues told me about this, and I went on to check it out, thinking that I could look better on Zoom, and it was already on. It was like the automatic default setting.
That's cheating. Cool. So, do you think we should do it? What's your thoughts?
I've just done it.
I don't want to do it because I might lose you. I might make it do something wrong.
You don't need it, Louanne. You look wonderful.
Thanks, Father Dan.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I mean, should we try that for tonight? Like, you could call me Father, or is that? No. Okay. So anyway, if you've just joined us, welcome. We've got a few ideas coming in. We've been camping in the backyard. I'm lying in a tent listening to you, Amy. That is so impressive. Thanks for that. That's really great. Staycation, walking daily on the beach and doing puzzles. We know the Prime Minister's wife is also doing puzzles from a recent news article. Friends set their tent up in the garden. The girls tried camping in the backyard. There's a lot of camping in the backyard. Send in your photos. We'd love to.
I've done that. I camped in the backyard at Easter.
Nice.
One night.
I've had lots of Facebook ads like trying to sell me this tent hammock thing, and I made the mistake of watching the video, and now I think I'm going to have to buy it to stop them advertising it to me. So that's good. Yeah, cool. Well, we're going to see Heather and Louanne. We're going to see lots of you guys later and hear about the amazing stuff you're doing. But so if you just stop and mute your video, and then we're going to hear from Steve and Nick first. And just while they're doing that, let me explain what's going to be happening tonight. Tonight we're doing some more world firsts. So we've had our dog for the first time on the video, but tonight we're going to try a live Lectio Divina. Now, Lectio is just a way of reading the Bible that enables us to go deeper into the text, and we believe allows God to speak to us in new and fresh ways. And so we want you to join in with the Lectio. So we're going to read out the Bible passage and then invite you to comment, and then we're going to read out your comments, and then we're also going to do it as a group and see what God might be saying to us as a group. So a bit more on that later. But the theme of tonight is thinking about like how we change the world, like how can we serve our community at church, but also the wider community during COVID. And that's why we've got Louanne on, who has done and is doing some amazing work, and Heather, who's doing some great work like globally. And then locally, Nick and Steve have been running a wonderful project, and we'd love to just hear a little bit from you guys about that. So we're not going to put the pictures up. People, you can see the pictures below of what's been going on. But you came up with this idea, guys, to just serve our community. Can you just tell us a really quick bit about it?
Yeah, sure. Well, we were basically just missing everyone and mostly the kids, no offense adults. And we just missed seeing them, and we just wanted to do something really nice for them. It's a little bit boring sometimes staying inside, and we just thought we both love cooking, and we thought, why not bless them that way, and just let them know that we're still here, we still love them, and miss them a lot.
So good. So I got a knock at the door the other day, as I said earlier, and you arrived with this wonderful like hipster package in a brown bag. Can you just tell us what you were doing, like what the recipes were, and like how it all worked?
So yeah, we picked out a bunch of recipes that we personally tried ourselves that we found really yummy. Trying to be healthy, so no refined sugar in these things. For the kids, trying to show them that healthy food can be yummy as well. But I think another part of that was that for us, with all of this talk of a virus going on, we wanted them to understand that it's important that they take care of themselves and stay healthy themselves in terms of what they're eating and all that sort of stuff. So we found 3 recipes and we just threw it out there to everyone if they wanted to get involved, just to pick one, and that we'd come along and drop off the ingredients for those particular items, and they could get together and cook them as a family.
It's so good, and the response was amazing. Like, you guys made a little video, just propped it up on your worktop, did a little chit chat about MasterChef or My Kitchen Rules, whatever it was, and yeah, watched the video earlier. We could explain that, but it was a really simple idea, and we shared a video, and it just went off. People really loved it. There's been lots of great ideas emerging, but this one seems to really have taken root, and so we're really grateful for you doing that. And so how many packages did you say you dropped off?
I think it was 10 in the end.
Wow.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. So there's lots of ideas out there. What did you say to someone who wants to do something similar?
Oh, just do it. Like, we're all in this together, and it just makes it a little bit more exciting when we get, you know, these fun ideas. And we'd love to do it again if anyone's interested in doing it again, or we also don't want to create too much work for the parents. So yeah, love to hear your feedback. But I think it's just it's exciting for the kids. It's all a bit confusing, I would think, for them. So however we can make it more exciting, the better.
And normal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, it wasn't much work for the parents because you gave us everything we needed. So we're really grateful for that. So we definitely be up for doing that again. But what really struck me about this project and what you guys have done is that it just brought a lot of joy at a difficult time. And the photos that were shared, you could tell the kids were just loving it. And I think the parents did too. And it was healthy. I ate about 5 of those cookies straight up. So if people want to see photos and videos, there's more below. But we're really grateful to you guys for doing this, and if you've got ideas, please share them. There's a lot of love coming in, but why don't we have some emoji love for Steve and Nick as they stick on. Now, if you guys stick around for a bit, we're gonna invite you into Lectio, and if Heather and Louanne want to make their way back, and if you've just joined us, as I said before, we're going to be doing a live Lectio tonight. So Lectio Divina is kind of like a monastic's all about monks, but like a historic way of reading text in such a way that allows God to speak to us in a different way. Often when we read the Bible, we can just buzz through it really quick, or we can read a big chunk and miss out on certain things. So what we're going to try is to do this live, and we know there's a bit of a lag. So I want you to be ready at your computers to type, but also if you've got a Bible at home, don't worry if you haven't got a paper one, like just Google it or look it up on your phone. If you've got a Bible, even if you don't go to church, you've never done this before, we believe the main way that God speaks is through the Bible. So if you've never heard from God before, who knows, like God could speak to you tonight. We believe he's always speaking, and this is a great opportunity to do that. So if you've been a Christian for, lots, 100 years, like Phil and Rhonda, or if you've been, a Christian just for a little while, or you've never explored Christianity, why not join in with this? So if you're new to faith, just Google the Bible passage. It's also going to appear below in the comments. So our wonderful official HVO is going to pin that now, and it should come up on your screens now. So it's Luke chapter 24, verse 13 to 35. And I don't want to say too much about the Bible passage, because the point of Lectio is that you don't have a preacher like me saying this is what the Bible says. It's about allowing the community to speak and to hear from one another. So in a moment, I'm going to ask Louanne to kick us off by reading the passage. But before we do that, it comes from Luke, which is kind of in the middle of the Bible-ish, more towards the end. But this is the narrative, the stuff about Jesus' life. And we're picking up the story right after Easter. So we believe that Jesus died on the cross. That's pretty much a historic fact. But as Christians, we believe he was resurrected and he came back to life. And that's kind of the preamble of what's going on today. So Louanne, are you up for reading
Sure.
it? I thought I'd go with you because you're a captain, and like probably in your job as like a church leader, you might have done the old Bible reading out loud before. So if you read to us, and what we're asking you to think about as she reads, we're going to read this through 2 or 3 times. So if you're listening online, what we want you to do is pick one word that jumps out at you. It's really simple, right? Everyone can do that. So the panel are going to do that, and we'll discuss that. And then while we're discussing, we want you to type what word jumps out at you. Then after that, we're going to read it through again, and then I'm going to invite you to elaborate on that word. And we're going to try and do this on Facebook Live and have a bit of discussion about what you're saying. So I'm going to mute my mic for a few moments, and Louanne, why don't you take it away?
Luke 24, verses 13 to 35, and this is from the New Revised Standard Version. Now on that same day, 2 of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied. "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things, then enter into his glory?" Then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he was going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning with us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road and how he had been known to them in the breaking of the bread.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. The reading today is really long, but we didn't want to break it up because there's just so much great narrative in there. So I'm not going to say too many words now, but I'd love for you to comment online, like what one word jumped out at you. What's the one thing? Just one word. You can't elaborate on it. Just one word, or maybe a phrase, or 2 words, but not a sentence. Just a really short thing that jumped out at you. So I'm going to start with our panel. I can go first. The word for me was astonished. And I really want to say more, but I can't. So others in the panel, why don't you go?
Can you only say one word?
One word or a phrase.
Eyes were opened.
Thank you.
That's mine. Eyes were opened.
Yeah.
Talking.
I'm a stranger.
For me, it was seeing and sight.
Wonderful. We've had some really great response online, guys. Thanks for being up for this. So I'm just going to read out the words that came in from online. So Jan says he went in to stay with them. Phil Johnson says burning. Karen says burning as well. Alex says necessary. Sue Williams says kept from recognizing him. Lyndall says near. Lauren says hearts burning. John says as if he were going on. Jan says stay with them. Mark Freeman says burning. Janaea says vanished from sight. Paul Sherwin says amazed. And there might be more that emerge, but we're really grateful for you getting involved in that. And if you've just joined us, we're doing a live Lectio. Lectio Divina is basically a way of reading the Bible differently that allows God to speak to us in a new way. So what I'm going to do now is invite, why don't we go for a male voice this time? Steve, are you up for reading passage? You could even do half each if you want, actually, which might be quite nice. So if you guys read through that, or if you just want to do it, if you want Steve to do it, Nick, that's fine. And this time what we're listing out for is, I want to give you the opportunity to elaborate on that word in your comments. Now, you may want to change camp and talk about something completely different. Something else might come to your attention during this reading. But if you can, I'd like you to elaborate on the word that you said, or just elaborate on what you think is jumping out at you. And what we've already noticed is different people are coming up with different things, and yet some people in that really long passage are coming up with the same words. So one, you can now write a phrase, you can elaborate on your word, or you can change camps to something else. So Steve and Nick, take it away.
Now on that same day, 2 of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other all about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him. Then he said to them, 'Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?' Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, 'Stay with us, because it is almost evening and the day is now nearly over.' So he went to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, 'Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?' That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered there. They were saying, 'The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon.' Then they told what had happened on the road and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread."
Wonderful. So this time we're going to elaborate on our words. So again, I'm going to ask the panel to do that first, and then invite people online to comment as well. And if you've just joined us, we're doing Lectio, which is like divine reading, like reading a Bible passage in depth rather than rushing and allowing God to speak to us in different ways. So well done for giving this a go. So my word has shifted. I've changed camps, which is completely fine. But that word burning that a few people had mentioned, and it reminded me of earlier. Jan was talking a bit about like sharing bread with one another, and it brought to mind like those conversations you have with people where it just works, and you feel like there's a connection. And I just sense that from that story, you know, like Jesus is there, and they've like they're talking to this guy, and he's wonderful. And then as he breaks bread, they're like, oh, and they remember that their hearts were burning. So that's my very extended phrase. Others in the panel, why don't you go?
I think for me, so the word talking for me stood out because it just resonated with me, this human history of we discuss things and we talk about things, particularly things in the past, as we remember what's happened. And that I know culturally at this point in time, without the technology and the written word and all that sort of stuff as much as we have today, that was a really important part of culture, is remembering your stories. But then as I was reading it, I read a whole part here about how Jesus, verse 27, then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. So again, he's talking to them, but it's not until he does something, it's not until an action of breaking the bread that they realize that it's him. Like, he's talking to them about himself through the scripture, but they didn't recognize it at that point. It wasn't until he broke bread that they kind of, their eyes were open, they realized it was him.
It's really great. It's really great. I'm just gonna read a couple online, and then we'll hear from Heather and Louanne. So Andrew says hospitality allows enlightenment. I love that. Feels burning as well. Sorry, I nicked your word. Deep inner connection, hope, excitement. Jan picked out, he went in to stay. When Jesus is within, our eyes and our hearts understand. We're going to read the others in a minute. Does Heather or Louanne want to share?
Yeah.
Okay. You go, Heather. You go, Heather.
I'm going to stick with my original words, so see and seeing. Like, I think just what stood out to me the most was that they didn't see, even though he was right next to them, that they couldn't see, that they were blind. And yeah, that's what stuck out the most to me in the passage, and just wondering how much that happens to us, that, you know, that Jesus is right here, is working in our midst, and we're missing it, we're not seeing it. Yeah, that's what stuck out to me the most.
Well, I'll follow. I had similar thinking to Heather. I had verse 31, then their eyes were open and they recognized him. And I think for me, yes, I, tried to work out solutions or solve a problem or what direction I should go in. And I found in my experience that, I'd be kind of trying to go this direction, and then all of a sudden God opens a door in another direction. And I was trying to work it out with my own human thinking and feeling and stuff, and not looking for where God was working. So that's why that stood out to me.
So good, guys. The temptation now for someone like me is to talk into that and to give a response to what they said. And I think it's really good, and I'd love to give a response, but we're not going to do that. We're going to hear the responses from people online, and then we're going to read it through once more. So Heather, I think that leaves you or me, but get ready to read, Heather. But we'll just read the response we didn't read. So Amy said, might indeed. Janaea said, the only stranger. Kate said, he walked ahead as if he were going on. Where was he going? ? I wondered that. Ask your husband. Maybe we'll discuss that in a bit. Lauren says, what everyday moments cause our hearts to burn within us? And how does God speak to us through these small moments? If we pause to listen and give them attention instead of rushing on with our days. There's a couple of questions emerging here, so I think we might have a discussion at the end. Alex says there's something about the necessity of Jesus' suffering to enter his glory. It's not comfortable to think about suffering being necessary. That's really good. Sue says, then their eyes were opened. The Holy Spirit opened them. Thanks, Sue. Kat said, he explained, one of the ways I connect with God or feel close to God is by studying his word and understanding the connections, the relevance, the magnificence of God's plan for the world. Imagine being taught by the ultimate rabbi or teacher. This is really good. Jesus came near. Jesus comes near to us where we are. Dave says, if you give, you will get. Sorry, my iPad. If you give, you will something in return. And I chose that since the woman let Jesus in their home, even though they didn't know that it was him. So he gave them bread and blessings. That's from Elise. Thanks, Dave. Karen says, Andrew and Kate's comments. Oh, you can read that. And Kate finally says, so you went into the house to stay with them. Okay, then, if you insist. So keep the conversation going, keep chatting online. We're going to have a discussion at the end and after the last reading. And what happens is in this version of Lectio, and I nicked this way of doing it off a bishop. So there's a million ways to do it, but the bishop used to do this for us, and it was really helpful and amazing the stuff that came out. So for the last one, we're just going to have a general discussion. So if you've got questions, the panel are going to just discuss what they feel like God might be saying. But by waiting, we're allowing God to speak, not ourselves in that sense. So Heather, why don't you read it through one last time?
Now on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all the things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" And they replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the third day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is now almost evening and the day is now nearly over." So he went to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed it, and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. And they said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed and has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road and how he had made known to them in the breaking of the bread.
Wonderful. Thanks, Heather. So we're just going to load up some comments. So if you want to ask questions or comment on anything, feel free to write them below. But it strikes me that there was a really interesting couple of questions there. And I love that thing Kate pointed out. I noticed that earlier as well. There's that little bit in the scripture where the disciples assumed that Jesus was going somewhere else. And Kate asked the question, where was he going? Did anyone else notice that or have anything they wanted to throw in? I know there's a little discussion going on online as well.
I don't have an answer per se, but a similar sort of question is, Jesus asked them what things are they discussing? And he already knows what's happened. I find it interesting that he still wants to hear what they think is going on before he reveals himself to them, which is a really interesting thing when you think about it. Like, he already knows the story, but he still wanted to prompt them and ask them that. Yeah. And so that happens quite early in this story. He asks them what things happened, and they tell him before he reveals himself. I just find that very interesting. Yeah.
There's that piece we were talking about the other day about Jesus being like a showman is a slightly loaded term, but like being really deliberate in the way he responds to people and deliberate in how he lays out the story and how he behaves, even though he knows the answer or he knows what's going to come. It feels like another example of that there's more going on there. So yeah, thanks for that. Yeah. So what questions have we got coming in online? LT Hopper, is that your brother, Louanne?
Yes, it's my brother.
We thought that was you last week, John said. Yeah. Yeah. Hi, LT. What do you think they're expressing when they said our hearts were burning? What do you think they were expressing when they said our hearts were burning? I reckon you should go for that one, Louanne.
Yeah, thanks. Is it sort of like burning? I think it could be either say a negative or a positive, like burning as in like inspired because they were with him and then they realized they didn't know they were with him, but you know, or is it more like hurting, burning, like regrettable or shame? I don't know, for not recognizing him.
It's really good. I never thought of it like that before. I think it's like for me, the bit that jumped at me was that excitement of like there's something here, but they couldn't work out what it was. So like they had this kind of like palpitations kind of moment where they were like, oh, this guy's like pretty interesting. Maybe we should follow this guy instead. And then they realized, like, they went, oh, we did follow that guy. It was Jesus. I don't know. Maybe there's a bit of that going on.
Depends what other versions use instead of burning. Like, what's the interesting to find the root of the word, what it is.
Yeah, someone look that up. Yeah, that would be helpful actually. I'll find that out. Those can be difficult while facing discussion. John, can you look that up for us? He probably knows. Yeah. Come on, sister, he says. Yeah, there we go. I wonder why Jesus appeared to these two. Excuse me.
Bless you.
These two people in particular. And why not someone else? So why do we think Jesus appeared to these two people in particular and not someone else? There's some interesting stuff going on in like the narrative of Luke, like the whole kind of picture of Luke, of like what Luke's trying to say with his story. And as we know with the Gospels, the different accounts of Jesus's life, different ones are trying to do different things. So last week we looked at John's Gospel, and we know that John is writing theology and trying to prove that Jesus is the Messiah. There's this kind of theme in Adam where I was reading this earlier. N.T. Wright was talking about it, saying that this is kind of going back to the Exodus. That is kind of a retelling of the Exodus story. So the disciples in that culture at that time would have had the Old Testament scriptures. They would have had that kind of first chunk of the Bible. And so they would have been able to recognize some of the things Jesus said and did as kind of like a retelling of that story. And so Jesus becomes the temple, he becomes the Holy of Holies. And as he dies on the cross, that becomes us. So in Jesus' death and his resurrection, there's no longer a need for the temple, but the Spirit, as we were talking about earlier, lives in us. So I think there's a bit of that going on, that like in the way in which he appears to people is quite deliberate. And it's really great that he first appears to women, and that the first people that Jesus, as I said last week, appears to are women, which wouldn't have been a very good way of proving that it was true, that he had actually risen from the dead. But again, that seems quite deliberate. So I think it's a little bit about that kind of Exodus piece, that like this is the new Exodus. Yeah. Did any others want to jump in on that?
I love that so much in this passage. I love that he first appears to the women, and then the women go and tell everyone, or tell the disciples, and everyone's not quite sure. Then the next, he appears to two unknown disciples who don't even have names, and it just makes this story so relatable. He didn't appear to some rich and powerful person. He just appeared to some unknown disciples, and that just really spoke to me so much.
And that might be a really helpful place to kind of to finish, because this story is often used in or this narrative is often used in meditation. So if you were picking a passage in the Bible to meditate from, in fact, one theologian said it's kind of up there with the prodigal son as like one of the key passages in the Bible, the kind of big moments that explain what the whole thing's about, where Jesus reveals himself. But if you want a passage to reflect on at this really difficult time, this one's kind of got it all. And I encourage you to try and look at the different characters and see yourself in each of the characters as you read through it. Because it's so random and yet beautiful, and so uncoordinated and yet coordinated, like what's happening in this great story. So I encourage you tonight or tomorrow, over this week, as we kind of, as COVID-19 becomes a new normal, as the new reality, I encourage you to read this story and kind of go on that journey. So yeah, we're gonna hold it there, and feel free to keep chatting online. I really want to hear from our panel and hear what they've been up to in terms of responding to community action. We're going to say goodbye to Steve and Nick now, so you can leave the room, guys. You don't need to mute now. So lovely to see you. Thank you so much. It's been really good.
Thank you.
Bye.
2 services today. So impressed. It's really great. So I think what we'll do, guys, is we'll keep Heather and Louanne in, actually, and we'll interview you both at the same time, and then take questions from people to respond. But Heather, do you want to mute your microphone first, and then we'll hear from Louanne first. Louanne, we've heard the kind of fun side of being an officer and a captain and all of that, but could you just tell us, I know the reason I've asked you to come on is your church does amazing stuff throughout the year. Your church is the one with the amazing graffiti down in Manly, if you ever drive past on the main road from the north down to the beaches. But you do really amazing community action, and that's kind of what we want to think a little bit about tonight. Can you share what stuff you did for the community before COVID-19, and
Sure.
then we'll move on from there? Yeah,
Sure.
Thanks.
So we have the I suppose it's kind of a unique opportunity and ministry of having a worship space and a community centre at Manly Salvos. It's very, well, like a physically quite a small building, but also in terms of we have a small gathering on a Sunday morning. But what's been happening in our building for, I don't know, over 20 years is a partnership with other faith communities, other local faith communities. And at the moment we are, well, prior to COVID, we were doing breakfast and lunch 3 mornings a week. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Fridays. and we have a shower, we have pantry. So the Salvos have like an assessment line. People ring up for financial assistance. So those people would come in as well, pick up a voucher. Probably feed about 20 to 25 people on those 3 days. The breakfast is quite small. It's just tea and coffee and toast usually. And we probably get maybe 8 people come to that. So it's a little bit like a community cafe. And so people come in, and it is run by the volunteers from other faith communities and other community members, just general community members that want to volunteer. And then once a month we have a meal called Feast, friends eating at Salvos together. And that's like we try to make that quite different to what happens during the week. It's a sit down. We always do roast dinner. We have dessert. I give a short message. And that's really we just want it to be like a banquet like we would have in heaven. We just want to bless people. We are blessed, so we want to bless people. And it's a little bit of a different dynamic to what happens during the week. So we have like tablecloths and real, we have real crockery during the week as well. But yeah, we sit down, we have flowers and just make it like a family dinner, I suppose. And that gets a broad crowd. Some people travel like from Kirribilli and stuff to come to that. So, and that averages about 50 people. We used to have about 80, and then over the years it's dropped down, but we've been doing that for over 10 years, and we have really great volunteers that are very committed to that. So
that's great. So good.
Yeah.
Can I just say, like, when you were sharing this on the phone when we chatted, because we did meet face to face once, but we've been like building this COVID-19 relationship over the phone because we're not allowed to actually see each other at the moment. But when you were explaining that, I was really struck by the way that you worked with other churches, and I think it's so exciting. Like, I think God loves it when churches work together.
Absolutely.
If you just joined us, Louanne's from the Salvos. She's just been explaining about some of the amazing community work that they've been doing as a church for years. This isn't a new thing. And tonight we're thinking a little bit about community action and a response to what's happening at COVID. So that's some of the stuff that's been going on. And I spoke to you a few weeks ago, and we've chatted since. That work's had to kind of shift, hasn't it, since COVID-19 broke out? Do you want to just share briefly about that journey and what's happening now?
Well, when they first brought in the kind of initial changes, I just realised straight away that we couldn't open our dining room and have people come in and have a meal. Hygiene is not high priority for most of those people, so that was a little bit concerning. So we were giving a takeaway meal from the church front door, and so people sort of like huddling in and getting that. But then when they brought in the rules about social distancing, we kind of changed the sort of logistics of how we do it so we could spread people out. And but it was quite overwhelming the first couple of weeks of what was the best thing to do. Obviously we want to care for the vulnerable and feed them, but also I had a responsibility of protecting staff and volunteers and myself. What's the best thing to do here for a lot of the people that come, where there are any kind of human connection. So because I was torn as like, if we keep feeding people, then people are coming out and the government's trying to discourage people from coming out. But then if we close, these people will not get to chat or see anyone. A lot of them live alone. So we're now we've now just cut down to 2 days and having limited volunteers, really one volunteer kind of doing that, and quite a simple meal. And the numbers have dropped down. Probably getting about 10 to 15 people instead of 25, but they're consistently still coming. So we're kind of in a rhythm of it now, so it's okay.
Just firstly to say, like, it's so encouraging that you've kept going. because it's really easy, isn't it, for us to not only self-isolate but isolate kind of what we do. And like, you guys are doing amazing work. You've got amazing relationships with like the people that are coming that you're feeding, that you're friends. So like, it's so encouraging that you're doing that, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a bit. But can you just share, like, you said there's still some of the regulars that are coming, like your friends that are coming to receive food. What's their experience been like of COVID-19? Because in some senses it's like fine for us, isn't it? Like we have to go to the supermarket once a week instead of lots of times a week, and maybe buy a bit more food and then be a bit more creative with our cooking. But what's it like for the people that are most vulnerable at this time?
Well, I do think some of them aren't really aware of what's going on to the extent of it. Like we had one, because one of the things we did the second week when it started was we had to close our shower. And not that I wanted to do that, but yeah, just anyway. So that's a big deal, right, for people that are sleeping rough. And like, not everyone that comes in is sleeping rough, but there is a small handful of people that. So one of the guys sort of, wasn't happy that we didn't have the shower open, and then he was sort of like saying, when's all this fuss about this cold going to be over? Because of course they don't watch TV or social media, or so they don't know how bad it is. But yes, some of them are talking about how lonely they are. And, a lot of them don't cope just in normal life, dealing with normal life stresses. So we did notice the first little while that there was a little bit more, people seemed to be, using substances, not that we saw them, but just their behavior. So, and, one of our guys who has been homeless for a long time, the first week he was sort of, at the end of the first week, he was just crying, which was really unusual, sitting in the gutter. And, he couldn't really identify what was going on for him, but he sleeps somewhere where a bunch of homeless people sleep. And he said that everyone had gone and he was the only one there. So I don't know whether some people took off and went to the city. So, yeah. I mean, I
think we forget that, right? We forget I have some really good friends in the UK that slept rough, and they like, in some senses, in their situation, were desperate and they wanted to be out of that situation, and yet at the same time found this amazing sense of community among others that slept rough, and like a kind of shared identity in a way of like people that genuinely understood them. So that must be so hard. Like that must be so complex. Yeah. Can I ask, I'm just conscious of time, this is so good, we could talk to you for hours. Like, we're so grateful for you sharing with us. What do you think the future looks like in terms of serving the community, like maybe in the short term, but also in the long term for you guys and for the church as a whole?
I don't know, really. I mean, I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I think for us, we've just been going one day at a time. That's the best way to deal with it. I don't know. I mean, I think actually one thing I do know is that I think, we also have a pantry where we give our food out. So most of those guys that come for a meal, they don't really want groceries and stuff because they don't cook or live in homes. But I think there's going to be a whole new group of new poor people that of loss of income. They haven't come to us yet, but I think maybe in 2 or 3 months, when they don't have any savings, they've borrowed from family and friends. I mean, really, people only come to the Salvos when they hit rock bottom. And, you have to, it's quite, as you can imagine, very humbling to have to come and ask for help. So I think probably in about 2 or 3 months, I mean, we have hampers ready to go, like that we haven't given out we haven't had any more new people wanting help. It's just the people we already know that we've been helping. So, but yeah, so I think that, maybe in 2 or 3 months, that's might hit us really hard. yeah, so I will say
That's interesting. That's really interesting.
I will say that the churches have really come together and are led by this guy at St. Faith's, and he's created this community co-op. And when I went to the first sort of ad hoc sort of meeting, because Harris Farm are donating vegetables and they want to give them out, it was like all the churches that were there, a person from each church, so that wanting to reach out and help people. So that was really encouraging.
So good, so good. Yeah, and we've noticed just in a small way, like church leaders come together. We've created this little Facebook group, which is slowly taking a bit of life, but we're hoping to pray together on Thursday as well, and just gather leaders together to do that. And I believe, like, firstly, the issues we're facing are bigger than one individual church, but also the space that the world's in at the moment, like the challenges, the questions that people are asking, is bigger than one church. Like, we've got to work together as God's people to do whatever we can to be there. So we're really grateful, Louanne. If you could just stay on for a minute and just mute.
Sure.
There's a question that's come in about how we can help. So perhaps you could think a little bit about that,
Sure.
how other people get involved. But we're going to just flick over to Heather real quick. And Heather, I was looking on your website the other day for Global Sisters, which is an organisation you work for, and I found out you are the COO. If you've just joined us online, we're just interviewing some wonderful people who are doing some amazing stuff during this really difficult time to respond to community needs, both locally and now further afield. So tell us a little bit about what it means to be Chief Operating Officer at Global Sisters at this time, because you've got work that you were doing and that's shifted over COVID. So just share for a few moments on that, Heather.
Sure. So to answer your question, yeah, I don't know what COO means. It's basically just a bit of everything. But Mandy is the founder of Global Sisters, and she told me about this idea that she had, and she knew that I had a background in microfinance in overseas, and asked if I wanted to get involved, and so I did. So I helped her set it up, and have been helping her run it ever since. So we're actually really focused on Australia. So I know the name sounds like that we're everywhere, and we will be, but at the moment we're just Australia. And the global part of Global Sisters.
That's prophecy. We're like looking to the future.
So the global part of Global Sisters is that we work with women from all over the world in Australia. So we started off working with a lot of women who were like typically disadvantaged, and so we would never say those words. We would never say disadvantaged or poor, but we were working with refugees and new migrants, and like the women who were doing it the very, very toughest in Australia. And just like a lot of high income countries like Australia and the States and the UK, you know, there are two countries in one. And you know, my background working in India and the Philippines and some of the world's worst slums and seeing the world's worst poverty, working with poverty here in Australia, it's just as bad. It just looks different. It just presents differently. And what we're really trying to do is to, I think, you know, you can kind of come at social change through a few angles. You can usually kind of come at it through education or through employment. And for Mandy and I, we're really big believers that the business and enterprise can change the world. And so we've come at it through employment, so particularly through self-employment. So, you know, if anyone knows about Muhammad Yunus and the Grameen Bank and the microfinance movement overseas, you know, you'll know that that's a great way to tackle poverty, is to enable someone to set up their own business and earn their own income. And that's what we wanted to do here in Australia. We just felt there wasn't a lot of focus on that. There's a lot of help to get jobs, but hardly any support to set up your own business and get yourself out of poverty through your own business. And so that's what
just
we
to
wanted
jump
to do.
in there, Heather, that's so helpful. And again, we'd love to hear loads about microfinance. We won't get into it in too much detail, but if people want to look that up, or indeed send you a message or give you a ring, you can talk more about that. But I know there's been a shift, hasn't there, in like kind of particularly in overseas like mission work, like with these like massive charities like Tear Fund or Tear, I think it's called here, and even like World Vision. They're changing how they do community organizing in order to enable people to kind of like set up their own businesses, set up their own organizations, just because they found that that's a more sustainable way of supporting people over a longer period and over generations. So yeah, it's great. So do you want to just share? So you're working with people that are quite vulnerable, and particularly at the moment are probably going through some difficulty, because it's probably a really difficult time to start a business right at the moment, or to sustain one. Do you want to just share like a couple of things that have been going on and how the work shifted?
Oh, look, it's really interesting. Like, so for us in the first 3-4 years of operation, we worked with around 1,000 women across Australia, and last weekend we had 700 women register with us. So the kind of the need has just exploded for us overnight, where, you know, we've had people who have never been on unemployment benefits suddenly losing their income, losing the ability to support themselves. And I think that this is really what we've been saying for a long time, is that pretty much all of us, we're only a few steps away from homelessness. We're only a few steps away from, you know, not being able to provide for our families. And there's just a real equality in what we do at Global Sisters. We recognise that if a few things change for me, I could be in the same situation as the women that we support. So many of our sisters have work in the casual economy, and while they're getting the business off the ground, and they've all lost their jobs. They've all lost their casual jobs. And our sisters are kind of like in a few different camps, but most are saying, this isn't the worst thing ever. This is just an opportunity to go hard and really get the business off the ground and really get it cranking. So yeah, it's, for most of our sisters, they're seeing it as this incredible opportunity. And then we've got a whole bunch of other women now coming to us and saying, we need support. Yeah, we don't want to be on welfare and we want to do something about it.
And just to jump in there, like, is there I love that you found some hope, some like just a direction for people at this difficult time. Like, are there any stories of just, if you could tell us one story of hope that's just come through in the last, I know you've been on a holiday last week, so that might, but before that, like one.
There's just, oh gosh, there's so many of our sisters who are changing their businesses to survive this. But my favourite is an older woman who up in Brizzy, who had come to us through community housing, had just experienced some terrible trauma in her life, and she'd been running yoga classes, face-to-face yoga classes, and obviously with COVID-19 can't do that anymore. And within a week, we taught her how to use Zoom, how to do Facebook Live. She started running live digital yoga classes within a week. And, you know, she didn't even know that technology existed a couple of weeks ago. And now she's successfully running this to people all over Australia. So yeah, it's been this amazing experience for her.
It's wonderful. There's a question that's coming in online for both of you. Firstly, Dave Thompson says, "Good job, Mum." But I assume he's writing on behalf of one of your children, and that's not how you refer to each other. It's like a father thing all over again. But maybe we'll start with Louanne and then come back to you, Heather, but feel free to leave your mic on now. We'll just jump around between. And any other questions, if you just put them below, we'd love that. How can people help? Like, how can someone sitting there and perhaps they've captured a bit of what you're saying and feel passionate about one of these things, like what can people do to respond? Because I think there is a desire both within our church and beyond for people to do something to try and serve the community, but sometimes, particularly at the moment, it can be difficult to find out. So Louanne, why don't you start, because I know we've talked a little bit about this, and then we'll hear from Heather.
Well, firstly, I'll say thank you to Kate and Jan, who came this week and did some cleaning in our kitchen while no one was in there, including I wasn't there either. And they're coming back, so that's a very helpful thing to do. And I suppose initially a helpful thing, if it was financial help you wanted to do, is to buy Coles or Woolworths vouchers, and then we can give those to people. At the moment, we have quite a lot of groceries, so I'll probably just put that on hold for a minute. But who knows? In a month's time, we might get you guys to do a bit of a drive for pantry items. But yeah, that would be my initial response. And pray, obviously.
Yeah. In that order. Thanks, man. And just to be specific, because I know, Heather, you said something similar as well, like with those Coles vouchers, like how much? Coles is a supermarket if you're tuning in from England, by the way. It's like kind of like Tesco's.
$20 or $50 vouchers is,
nice.
$20 is fine.
So there's 26 people watching, some people watching in couples. Wouldn't it be great if we could get 25 of them? And Heather, do you want to go as well?
Yeah, look, for us, we've got now, it's by the time I get back from leave, it's probably going to be over 1,000 new sisters who need business coaching support. So we do almost everything online in this kind of format, and we desperately need business coaches. And so that's anyone who knows how to run a Zoom session, how to set up a Facebook page, set up an Instagram page, set up a website, do a Canva marketing document. If you have any of those kind of skills, or literally just want to get alongside a woman and kind of be a bit more kind of accountability coach and support that way, we desperately need new volunteer, what we call coaches, and there's a whole bunch of different ways where you can, very, very limited time, so an hour, or a regular thing over 12 weeks, once a week. So any of those kind of things, if you want to get involved, just private message me and I'll let you know how you can do that.
Yeah, great. Or you can email hello@h3o.church, hello@h3o.church. Alex will post it below, and then we can pass on the details as well if you can't find Heather online. I could do with a coach for that. I needed one this afternoon for running a Zoom on Facebook Live, but I've learned how to do it now. So yeah, I'll be in touch. That's really helpful. Are there any other questions? Yeah. Heather says, are there some common businesses that women typically start or want to start in Australia? Like, are there some, are you noticing a trend?
It's everything from robotics coding schools to maker businesses to agri businesses. Like, it's just every kind of business you can imagine, and from really micro tiny to take on the world, start exporting. So there's just everything in between. So we're not looking for any specific business expertise, just really kind of generalist expertise and willingness to get alongside women. Really great.
And can it be men as well?
Absolutely. The reason why that we support women is because we know that if you invest into a woman, the ripple effect is going to be it's going to be broader. Internationally, all the research says that. So that's the reason why we support women. But absolutely, all of our coaches, our board, we've actually got one guy on our team of 20. Men are definitely welcome.
Great. No, thanks. And Julian's written, Global Brothers, question mark, question mark, question mark.
Nah, there's plenty out there for guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm with you on that. Alex said she loves the dignity that both projects give. Tablecloths and referring to the women as sisters, empowering those you help. Thank you to both of you for that. If there's any other questions coming in, we're gonna end our time together in a few moments. But just if you've joined us, this is Heather from Global Sisters and Louanne from the Salvos in Manly, and they're doing some amazing work as we think about and respond to this new normal of COVID-19. One of the things I was thinking a little bit about just while we were waiting for other questions to come in was, like, I know I said this a few weeks ago, but the church isn't a stranger to this stuff. Like in history, the early church grew at its fastest rate in history between the time of Jesus' death and 325 AD. Most people think that the church didn't really grow that much then, but it grew exponentially at that point, and that's only been matched by church growth in China recently. And it's interesting, the church in China is persecuted, and in that culture at that time, the church was persecuted when it grew loads. And the Christians, and this is what reminded me when you were chatting, Louanne, in particular, the Christians were the ones that stuck around when people got sick. So there was kind of pandemics going on at the time in the early church, and loads of people left the cities, loads of people withdrew, but it was the Christians that stuck around to serve and love people. And I was just reminded of that. Like I was so encouraged, Louanne, that what you've done is you've kind of had to, and the same with you, have a shift what you do, but still stick around for people. Not, it's really important for us to isolate. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. Like, we do that because if we spend loads of time with lots of people and we try and like be too helpful, I know we can do that sometimes. Actually, we're just going to increase our risk of infecting other people. But when the church sticks around, when the church gets down in the dirt and actually does stuff, like it grows, God moves. Like we've seen that throughout history. And the church grew at its fastest rate it's ever grown at during those times. So
it's encouraging.
It is, and I believe something's coming. I think something's shifting in the church, and there's exciting things to come, and there's exciting things happening now. We believe in a God who in Jesus was persecuted, was trodden down, and then came back to life again like a phoenix from the ashes. So yeah, I'm just seeing if there's any other questions. No, I think we're there, guys. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. It's been so good to have you with us. We'll be praying for you. And just a quick recap. So for Global Sisters, we need coaches, people that can help with kind of tech and putting stuff online. Their work has exploded. And Louanne said that actually at the moment, tins might be helpful, might be required further down the track, and we'll make sure we hear from you around that time. But actually, Coles vouchers are really helpful for people at the moment. So if you'd like to purchase a Coles voucher, you can do that online, and you can either send it direct to Louanne or send it again to hello@HVO, and we can pass them on. But wouldn't it be great if everyone online just grabbed one of those vouchers, even if it was for $20? Like we can make we can make a difference. There's a lot of people tuned in today. So thank you so much for your time, guys. We're going to say goodbye to you now. So if you leave the meeting, but they're going to jump back on Facebook and answer any other questions or comments as we finish our time together. So just to finish, a couple of notices and then a final prayer. Church would not be church without notices. So we've got some really great stuff coming up. If you are new to Christianity or you're thinking about exploring faith for the first time, we're running something called Alpha on Zoom. And the great thing about it being on Zoom is you can do it from the comfort of your own home. If you're watching from England, you can join Alpha. We're going to be running it on I should know that, Wednesday evenings at 7:30 on Zoom, and it starts a week on Wednesday. So if the person that's commenting could just put the link for the Facebook event below, that'd be really, really helpful. And one of the ways that you can help if you're a Christian and you've done Alpha or it's not your thing is to invite people. I remember in the UK, I invited a friend rather cheekily. I just sorted all my friends into the local area and just invited everyone. And I shouldn't really have invited this guy. I had no right to invite him. And he showed up on the first night. He didn't come back after that, but he showed up. So you never know what a cheeky invite might do. But I would also couple that with prayer. So there can be opportunities to pray in the coming week. And if you're interested in that, send us an email at hello@hco.church. There'll be some Zoom prayers for Alpha in the coming week. This is a great opportunity for people to explore faith at this difficult time. The other thing we're doing, we're going all in on courses at the moment, and we're going to be giving people the materials to run a marriage course. Me and Alex did the marriage course when we've been married about 6 months at a church in London called HTB, and it was really great. We found it so helpful. I remember when I told my mum that I was going to be doing the marriage course, she said, do you want me to clear your room out? Like, are you moving home? But really what the marriage course is about is you don't necessarily have to have lots of problems to do it. A good general prepares for warfare in times of peace. And it's about building strong, long-lasting, lifelong marriages. So we're going to be giving people the tools to run that. We've already had 1 or 2 people sign up. If you want to sign up for that, email hello@h3o.church, always the same. And we'll make sure we give you the information. We're going to be sending around little packages, so some wine or a kind of drink of your choice for the first night. And we're encouraging people to pick an evening in the week and try and do the course over 6 weeks. It explores topics like communication, conflict resolution, good sex. So we're really looking forward to that, to the marriage course, because we think that society is built on really great marriages. So we want to take some time to invest in that, and the staff team are committed to do that. We're going to be back next week with both our services. More information on that to come, but we're so grateful that you're tuning in. Thank you so much for the engagement. We are really, really pleased to see the number of people that are commenting and interacting online. And let us know how you think tonight went in the comments below. We'd love to know what you thought of live Lectio and how we can improve that. We're working tirelessly to think about how we can engage more as a church. So that's it. There's a drop-in tomorrow, 10:30. Jan is hosting rhyme time for the little ones. Adults can go as well if you want. Might be a bit weird, but you're really welcome. So we'd love to see you at that. I'm going to pray and then give us a final blessing, and then we'll end our time together. God, thank you for the amazing work that we've heard about tonight. From small projects, which start with a couple just making a video, deciding they want to deliver ingredients to people's houses to cook, to people working with vulnerable women, to people working with the homeless, the people that are sleeping rough in Manly. We thank you so much for the amazing work, and we pray for those 3 groups of people that we've heard from tonight. And we pray for our church at this time, that you would show us how we can serve our community and continue to play our part in changing your world. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And so may God, the Son of Righteousness, scatter the darkness from your path and make you ready to meet him again when he comes in glory. And the blessing of God Almighty, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit be among you and remain with you always. Amen. Good night. Thank you so much.